Into what everybody wants to hear me talk about. I have told you guys I have been completely wrong on Penn State. I have my hand up and said it. Now, again, we talk about Penn State. You talk about any college football analyst that gets paid the big bucks. We all thought Penn State was going to be there. We all thought Penn State was going to make the college football playoffs. Nobody expected this season from them. Now, I talked about going into last week. I talked about how I believe James Franklin should not get fired. He loses a huge 20-point spread to UCLA last week. Coming out of that game, I said there was major coaching mistakes, but he should not be fired. I have talked to you guys what it does to a program when you fire a coach right now in the NIL transfer portal era. You fire somebody before this era, it isn't that big of a deal because, again, all your money was going to coaches. So it wasn't that big of a deal to fire a coach, to buy out a coach. If you believe that was the case, all you're paying is the coaching staff and truly. So for you to fire a coach in a different era was not a big deal. Now you fire James Franklin, and I'm going to flat out and say it. I'm not going to completely switch my opinion. I am not 100% sure what I would have done if I was in Penn State shoes. You lose two 20-point spread games back-to-back against UCLA, against Northwestern. That's completely inexcusable. It is something that can never happen if you are a top program like Penn State. I don't know if I have ever seen it happen. I would have to look back and do some research. I don't know if I've ever seen a program that's like a top 10 program going into the year like Penn State, a top 5 program, lose two 20-point spread games back to back. It is inexcusable. I have said it in the UCLA game when we were going over that game. I thought there was multiple coaching mistakes in that game. And I felt the same way about this Northwestern game as well. When we look at the play calling late in that game, it looked like James Franklin, I never want to say it, but it looked like he gave up on his team. Now, for James Franklin, I'm still going to say it. With the hand he was dealt with going into this hiring over the last, I believe it was 12 years. Maybe it was a little less his tenure, but I thought with the hand he was dealt with, obviously everybody knew the state of where Penn State was at when he was getting hired. I don't have to go over the outside issues. I still think James Franklin did not have a bad tenure at Penn State. When we look at his record, I believe it was like 145-45. He did have a Big Ten championship for Penn State. Last year, he was one of the last 4 teams in the college football semifinals. Like, there was definitely successful years for James Franklin and Penn State. Multiple successful years. But to sit here and say that I 100% disagree with Penn State letting him go, like I said, it is tough during the college football era that we are in now where you want to pay players. I get it, a lot of these schools have deep pockets. A $50 million buyout is tough. And I said it with Penn State last week. If you were going to fire James Franklin, and I understand this team needs a change of face after 2 20-point spreads that are inexcusable, you can't accept that. You can't have him coaching next week. So in a way, I agree with this, but at the same time, now you have to find somebody that's going to be a significant upgrade for Penn State, a guy that's going to get Penn State to a national championship, which we haven't seen. You got to make sure you're getting this upgrade. And we have said it. I understand there are coaches right now better than James Franklin. When you look at Lane Kiffin, Kurt Signetti, Dan Lanning, even Ryan Day, who was questions last year. Like, there's a multitude. Kirby Smart, obviously. Like, we could name off the coaches that are better than James Franklin right now. But those coaches flat out are not available. So now you bought out James Franklin for $50 million. You got to have somebody in mind that you think is a significant upgrade over him? Because you just ate all this money in a transfer portal NIL era that could really set you back when you talk about getting talent. And we get it, they have deep pockets. Now there was rumors going on that Penn State could get Kurt Signetti. I'm flat out going to say this to you guys. That's not going to happen. Indiana is going to do whatever they can right now to keep Kurt Signetti. And I really don't know who's available for Penn State to, again, to buy out James Franklin. I don't know who's going to be available and a better change of faith that's going to lead them to a national championship. Penn State, in my opinion, you just got to chalk it up to they were in an extremely tough spot. You can't tolerate two 20-point spread losses by any means. But also, like I said, to buy out somebody for $50 million is completely tough as well when James Franklin had successful years and is going to put you behind the eight ball with players. I see both sides of it. I'm not going to fault Penn State either way. They decided to fire him. Last week, like I said, I thought there was no way they should have fired James Franklin. I also thought there was no way Northwestern was beating Penn State and they were going to have these consecutive 20-point spread losses. They do. Now we get into the other factor of Penn State. We're going to talk about Drew Allar now. We didn't fault Drew Allar for coming back to Penn State, but we also discussed, we have an episode dedicated. You guys have to scroll all the way down. Drew Allar making this decision to come back to Penn State because there was rumors going into this NFL draft that Drew Allar, based off of potential, his size, his arm strength, what he could do on the football field, that he was going to be a top 5 pick. We had sources saying that Cleveland Browns were prepared to take him with a top 5 pick. Now you look at Drew Allar, and again, everybody's learning under this NIL era what they should do. I mean, we talked about Nico Lava absolutely blowing a bag and absolutely blowing a great situation. Drew Allar now, after a disappointing start to the season, now he has a season-ending injury. He completely changes his fate and his opportunity. If he would have left last year, he would have been a first-round talent. Now you look at him, and I don't think he's going to come back to Penn State by any means. And you look at this guy now being a 3rd, 4th, 5th-round pick, depending on how he's viewed after his injury, where he was a pretty much locked top 10 pick last year if he would have came out. These are all learning curves with this NIL era now that we all are like viewing for the first time. Drew Allar made a massive mistake, but I said it, like, this Penn State was really going all in this year, and similar with Clemson, like an absolute failure, but everybody was coming back. They were one of the most experienced teams in college football between Dennis Sutton and the 2 running backs. Like, everybody that was coming back, what they did in the transfer portal at receiver. Like, Drew Allar wanted to come back. It showed character. It showed how much he loved Penn State. And we didn't fault him because there are only 4 or 5 years, whatever, that you were going to be a college kid. I don't want to judge it from, an outside viewer. Like, I will never be in Drew Allar's situation. It looked like everything was set up for him to have a successful season this year. It did not work out this way. Should he have maybe took the NFL offer? Hindsight's 2020. Like, again, I didn't fault him either way, but I wanted to talk about that, like, massive decision for Drew Allar. Could have been a first-round pick last year. Now he's going to be a 4th, 5th-round pick. The only thing I do have to say about Drew Allar, why I also don't fault it in this era as well, this was a guy that was picking up $4 million a year. This is a guy that set himself up nicely regardless. But it's going to be interesting to see where Drew Allar lands in the NFL. Complete disaster for James Franklin. Complete disaster for him. And now they go with Terry Smith as their interim head coach. Terry Smith has worn a lot of hats for Penn State. He was a DB coach. For the last couple of years, he was associate head coach. Now he takes over as the interim head coach. They don't go with Tom Allen. And now they go with Ethan Grugemeyer, who is going to be interesting to see how they use him. They do play Ohio State in their schedule, so I think they're going to rely heavily on their run game still. They're going to give the ball to their 2 NFL running backs in Nick Singleton, Katron Allen. Ethan Grugemeyer, though, he is a redshirt freshman, technically a sophomore, depending on how you want to look at it. He was a four-star recruit. He is a guy that's a pocket passer. He tends to get the ball out quick, and he is able to run when he needs to. He is a guy with a lot of talent. It's going to be interesting to see where Penn State goes from here. Again, we saw UCLA fire their head coach. They uplifted themselves. They've won 2 games straight now. Ironically, one against Penn State. It's going to be interesting to see how Terry Smith handles this now.